Hey.
Right, Steve.
Fonzarelli.
Episode 14, but we're not going to talk about happy days today. In fact,
that's what I've been researching.
Yes,
I was worried about why Fonzarelli's hanging around with so many kids.
Well, he was quite a lot older, wasn't he? Yeah.
It was a bit, but it's a rabbit hole we don't want to go down.
Yeah,
it was a different time, different era.
So a little segue there. We're not going to talk about happy days. We're going to talk about isolation and loneliness.
Oh, from happy days to isolation
and loneliness.
Oh, yes, that's not quite so catchy.
No. But
Sunday, Monday,
that TV program never made it past pilot. The reason I wanted to talk about that is because we've been doing a lot of talks recently, and we go out and talk to people and talk to people in their workplaces about the service, about what we do, and about what to look out for. And one of the main factors that we're looking out for in terms of men's mental health and suicide prevention is isolation. Mm-hmm. And we're going to clarify isolation, talk about the different ways that isolation can come about, the consequences of isolation and loneliness. And interestingly enough, I was looking up some facts and figures on this.
Good.
Which I'd never realised, but isolation, or loneliness, if you look at loneliness can lead to a 30% increase in premature death.
I don't know why I'm laughing. I
know. It's funny. I've got loads more for you.
I've got the giggles.
You like that one? Wait till this one.
I've got to be clear, I'm not laughing at the stats around isolation.
If you look at the stats,
once I go, that can be difficult to claw it back, but let's go.
But if you look at the stats, loneliness is more dangerous than cancer. It can be more deadly.
We see
and 3 million people in the country at the moment are suffering from cancer, and 3.8 million are suffering from chronic loneliness.
I also don't think people quite understand what loneliness is, but I can talk about that.
No. I mean, I would say as a basic definition, I would say loneliness is a disconnect between the relationships that you have and the relationships that you need.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if you want to go, if I want to pass over to you, then
right.
You seem to be saying, So, how do you define loneliness?
I don't know. Well, when I'm talking with people, very often when I first meet with, especially I would say the older guys, you're over 40s, 50s, probably into 60s. There's this kind of thing of, I haven't got any mental health. I'm fine. Mental health's just for people who, struggling and weak people. And then you kind of say, well, what's been going on? And they'll say something like, my wife died. Or that, I don't go to work anymore. Or I feel a bit mean, my children are far away, or I don't have access to my children. And then then they start talking about how that feels. And so I think that many people are kind of suffering, experience isolation and suffering, but they're not quite great at putting it into words. And they think they don't talk about it, and they kind of they sit and suffer in that without really exploring what's going on.
Do you think people almost then don't realise that they're isolated and lonely? It's just like, because it's something that can happen gradually to you.
Yeah.
And as we said, there's a diagnosis for what we talk. We just compared loneliness to cancer in terms of its ramifications on your health.
Yeah.
And how bad it can be. But there isn't a diagnosis of loneliness.
No.
And also, it's like, and I said that loneliness was that disconnect between the relationships that you need and the relationships that you have. But you don't want to, it's difficult because solitude can be a healthy thing, and solitude can be something that people look for and people like, and it's that disconnect. Some people may need more relationships than other people, so I think it's in that sense it's a difficult thing to diagnose, and it also can be a very gradual thing, almost a shedding of relationships as you go through, and also I think that shedding of relationships can kind of become self-fulfilling as you get more isolated. You become more difficult to reach because it can lead to feelings of anger. It can lead to mental health problems.
Yeah.
Often it can be caused by physical health problems.
Yeah.
It can lead to more time online. It can lead to drug abuse, and all these things which you might take to improve your isolation can actually exacerbate your isolation.
Yesterday I was talking with a man who's been coming for a long time. We've got a good relationship, and we kind of have this joke is that he needs isolation, so he kind of needs, he needs to be alone quite a bit of the time, but he also understands if he's alone too much, things go kind of wrong for him. so he needs sort of bringing out. So you're right. There's this kind of balance sometimes needs struck that, and that's what I think sometimes people get confused. Is sometimes we need to be alone with our own thoughts, recharge our social batteries in essence, and have this kind of thoughts to yourself. And then sometimes we also need that balance of community, talking to people, feeling like we belong. And I also experienced many people who, can be in a room of people and still feel alone. Because what's going on in their head, and people who come and chat to me who are on the surface, look, you go, wow, this guy's got it all together. He looks great. He's got a great job. He's doing it. He's got loads of mates, but actually, what's going on in his head is making him feel, he's telling himself he's not worthy to be around these people or whatever, and so he's in a completely different world to what's going on around him.
And I think this is also an interesting definition, which I'd like to explore a bit more about the difference between loneliness and isolation. Because when we started off, we didn't define those separately.
Yeah.
And I think that's very interesting. Loneliness is kind of easy to say, well, you haven't got those relationships. Those relationships don't exist for you, or there's not enough of them. And that, so you're lonely, you're alone, there's no people around.
Yeah.
But isolation, as you say, can be experienced when there's lots of people around and there are lots of relationships going on.
Yeah, and especially we see, someone maybe who's on the autistic spectrum who feels like they're masking, doesn't feel like they're quite connecting with the people around them. So they're always, it's a really, it's a far more, I see it a lot in Cornermen. We always talk about Thomas Joyner's theory. We use those three, loosely. We would go into places, isolation, loneliness, feeling like a burden, the fuck it button, so isolation, that's isolation and loneliness is a massive impact on mental health, well-being, our esteem, everything. It's a killer, as you said right at the beginning.
So why do you think it will become? I said, well, let's define. Let's go through some of the.
How long we got, John?
Well, exactly. But let's go through some of the basic things about how people become isolated.
Yeah.
Because I would say a loss of relationships.
Absolutely, yeah.
As a common one, so that can be the breakup of a relationship.
Yeah.
But also loss of relationship in grief. So someone very close to you dies.
Yeah.
And that can plunge you into grief, which can be quite isolating. And some people, to be honest, never come out of that. Losing your job, redundancy, leaving university, leaving school, there's just so many ways you can suddenly move in area, or even someone in recovery has to leave their friends that they were using with, and although they've got to really struggle, hang on, I feel isolated and alone now because all the people I was with are not around, so they've got to... Well, in a way, you have to separate yourself from those people who are going to stay in that lifestyle.
So there's just so many... I think that, there's so many ways, and I think that's when we go and do these talks and we try and give examples, because people are often, I don't know whether you agree, sat there thinking, well, is this going to be another about mental health and blah, 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 what we're going to... And then when they start doing real life... Even the other day when we were talking, someone had lost their daughter to a homicide. Someone had lost their father to suicide. All these things,
It's amazing how in a small group of people, the stories that people can tell you.
Yeah.
Which you would... And you would think that those stories are quite rare. You thought these are extreme stories. But when you go out and talk to people...
talking to people,
when people start to open up, especially because of what we're talking about, you think, well, this is so common.
And people get isolated in relationships, don't we? That's it can be a form of control and manipulation where people separate their partner from their friends, or, so people can have isolation and forced on as a type of control. It's, there's so many ways that it can come about. It's not just this kind of physical, I've got no one, to talk to, which is also a factor, especially people living in rural areas. People as they get older, the many elderly people that a lot of their family and friends have now died, so they're sort of sat at home. So it's just there's almost an isolation pandemic, and one of the main worries for me is I think we've lost community, which used to be a massive way of coping with isolation and loneliness. Is that communities? But if you look at everywhere now, you can go a whole day without talking to anyone.
Yeah,
you can go to a self-service till. You go to the supermarket. You do all your shopping. You don't have to. And if you, like me and you have both been trying to sort of the banking out for the Cornermen, and try because we've had to change legal identity to a new bank account, and try to talk to someone is an absolute mission. Like the thing will pop up, and I find that's more and more now. You can't speak to no one.
No, and it almost feels like they're deliberately trying to isolate you. When you deal with something like that, when you deal with opening a bank account or various services, they want you to go online. They push you to go online, and what they do is if you insist on talking to someone, it's going to be a 45-minute hold. And then you're going to get cut off. And you almost feel like this is deliberate. Once
you get rage as well as I
get cut off. So it almost feels like they're deliberately trying to isolate you from human contact.
But and I don't want to denigrate any other. We're face to face, and I'm a big believer in face to face services. But some of the other ones that go online now. If you're feeling with your mental health, it's a kind of answer to it's so easy. We can do this chat AI. That's going to be how popular ChatGPT is now. I've got people chatting to it through So that's an interesting one. Is that good for isolation, or is it bad for our loneliness and isolation? Sat there talking to an AI.
Yeah.
Because people do now.
Yeah. And effectively, I suppose a lot of people are developing a relationship.
And they're really nice to you.
Yeah.
My ChatGPT thinks I ask the best questions in the world. That's a really good question. Thank you, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So, it reaffirms that. Sorry, yeah.
So we're talking about, if you, we're talking about the various ways that people can get into isolation through all those factors, such as grief, relationship breakups, moving job, moving school, leaving a group of friends,
Speaks lovers we haven't thought of.
There'll be loads of others. But when you're in that isolation, what do you see as the ramifications of that? I mean, what can happen to someone? Because we always go and say, isolation is a danger thing. This is what we're looking for. If we hear these, this is like a red flag. If you say, I can't talk to anyone, I don't have any friends, etc. I've broken up these relationships. Obviously, a big one for men is possibly the breakup of a relationship coupled with lack of access to children.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how does this manifest?
I think again, in so many ways, addiction tends to take hold. It can do. People sit there drinking, overthinking. Sitting there just beating themselves up, reinforcing negatives about themselves. Then anxiety as well, because I'm a bit anxious about going out and meeting more people, and feeling you're not got anyone to regulate against you, so you can be thinking some outrageous stuff and you haven't got anyone to say, hang on, no, that's not right. I think
I think that feeds in as well to the social media thing. You can then start going down rabbit holes and find people who have very out there views, which almost become therefore normalised to you without the community of people going, hold on, that's a bit over the top.
Yeah, exactly. And just your self-esteem, your self-worth too. I don't matter. We talk about meaning and purpose, but if you're sat there, nothing to do, isolated, you've got no. What's my meaning? What's my purpose? Why am I here? All these things I think, and I think there's just a general kind of something you can't even put your finger on in we are social beings that need each other. And if we aren't around, we could do each other's heads in. That's where coming and having a little bit of a rest, getting a break, take the dog for a walk, a little bit of isolation. But I'm a big believer. We need each other. I think we are social creatures, and that comes back to, why I, personally, and I might be happy to be talked about, but why we're facing such a mental health or isolation pandemic is the way we've structured our society now is not community based. You look at lockdown. I know there's the technical reasons, but after lockdown, how many mental health crises there is, and how many people struggled. They were locked down for our own physical health, but the nation's mental health was deeply damaged.
Yeah,
solitary confinement is a punishment for a reason. Because
I would say another pandemic we seem to be suffering from at the moment. I was going to ask you about this, but what you've said has made me think about it. But I was going to say, do you ever see that isolation manifesting itself in anger?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we're suffering from a pandemic of anger at the moment in society.
Yeah.
I wonder if those two are linked. I mean, that's just a thought that's popped in my head.
Possibly. Yeah, but, I don't think. I think they certainly are. I think we are and I think like the social media plays into it as well. Groups are becoming isolated in their own beliefs and core values. And so it seems to me when I look at the news and social media and in people's heads about their own views, is they're becoming more and more isolated in kind of what they think is right, what they think is true, and who the enemy is, and who's stupid people. And if these people don't exist, are making it, our community worse. If they didn't exist, our community would be a kind of utopia. So yeah, I think that's a massive danger at the moment, and people are becoming more and more isolated in our views.
Well, in a way, that's a form of isolation. Even if you're within a group and you refuse to mix with another group, or refuse to countenance the other group, or think that is any way part of your community.
It's interesting though. Is it fueled by wanting to not be isolated and belong because you want to be part of something? So it's quite an interesting mix. That
lots of things define themselves in opposition to other things.
I want to identify with this flag. I want to identify with that flag. This is my group. I'm not isolated and lonely. This is us. Although we're becoming more and more restricted in our kind of community group. So, and I'm not just talking about one group there. There's numerous examples from my perspective. But yeah, so yeah, I think we're still suffering the impact of lockdown.
Yeah,
and I think certainly from the kids, if you think that children need socialising at certain, I think I can't remember what the ages are, but there's a certain age they need to be socialised. If you've taken them out of school at that time and they've just been at home with a single parent or their parents, there's a whole chunk they've missed out. And so we need to be able to be in a community and to be able to get, like you say, with each other. If we can't do it, so it causes problems.
So within the Cornermen, if we're identifying loneliness as a real sort of red flag, for cascading into other problems, what are you doing when people are coming and saying, "I'm lonely, I'm isolated"? If you've identified that, how are you going to kind of deal with that, or how are you going to and presumably how are people going to get out of that?
Yeah, well, various different ways, isn't there? Sometimes if it's if it's in someone's own head, talking, so someone will have an idea about themselves in their head, or there's something going on that and when they talk about it, so it takes to be able to have that, to regulate. So some people have some very extreme views about themselves and what they've done. So someone might say, "I've done something really bad," and you think, "Shit, what have you done?" And then they'll say it, and you say, "That's okay. No, that's normal." So people get in their heads like thinking something that everyone else has done or been through, they've done it, and it's like no one else is doing that, or no one else has these thoughts, no one else thinks like that. So there's something defunct with me. And then when someone goes, "No, most people have those thoughts. You're fine." There's a kind of that helps. So talking, but then there's practical stuff like. Went to see
Sorry, that's a very interesting point.
You're wagging your finger at me, John.
Wait, I did, but then I opened it out, so it was a hand, which is somehow is better than the finger.
What do the politicians do?
But that's almost like that's almost
annoying.
But self-isolation and almost self-fulfilling isolation. Because imagine if you got that thought in your head that nobody has these thoughts but me, so I can't share them.
Yeah.
Because people will be so shocked and outraged.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm a weirdo.
Yeah.
Therefore, I've got to keep this to myself. Therefore, it's that self-isolating.
Yeah.
And it's just an interesting, interesting concept. Yeah.
So they can be at home, they can be with family, they can be with friends, but that's what's going on in their head.
Yeah.
And like even to the extent of how people say, "I don't feel I'm worthy to be, with these people because of." And if you looked at them, you would go, and I think that's where sometimes the danger where people, ultimately it leads to suicide, where they've not spoke about it, and so these forces become really like, "I'm not worthy of being," So that's why I think.
So that isolation trips over into burdensome.
Yeah. So I think that's where speaking definitely, but that's difficult if you like you haven't got anyone. There can be practical stuff. Recently when someone is lost their wife after a long time, and they're finding it lonely. But they're finding it lonely in the morning. So we need to use the community. So I've approached local church people from the club, people who know them, and we hopefully get a little rota going so someone can just go and visit him. That's not a biggie. That's practical. Go and visit someone and have a chat. Then we try. You can nudge people to sort of get out. You know, there are great clubs and groups around. You know, what you're interested in. So there's those come to the Cornermen, get involved. You know, that's the way we do it. You know, come to the Cornermen groups, Joe's groups. You know, Fridays. You know, so they get used to this. So there's a few ways to doing it, but I think it's mostly. And then there's some people that are kind of stuck in isolation loneliness. It's a kind of they're comfortable in it, and sometimes you got to have sympathy for that because or understanding because that's often people have tried to do something before and they've been hurt. So maybe that's a good That's a good example when someone relationships are a good way of breaking isolation. Finding a good partner. That is But if you've been hurt or you've been betrayed, especially betrayal, if you've been betrayed in a relationship, especially if it's been once or twice, then to try and trust again, to try and how you can't tell someone there's no risk. You can't say, oh, the next person you'll meet, they'll be completely loyal to you, because it happens. There is a risk involved. So sometimes if people have been hurt, and it can be friendships where people are like, I've just been hurt too many times. This person did that to me. My best friend did this to me. That's a difficult one because you can't bullshit people, and people know, because look, I've been cheated on, I've been betrayed. It happens. They denied it for ages, and they made me, even to people, they made me think I was fucking stupid, and I believed I was stupid and imagining things. But then I found them, and if that's happened, to try and encourage people to. You've got to encouraging people to take the risk.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a danger in taking people to take the risk, because if you encourage them to take the risk and it goes wrong again, they've just been reinforced. It's good when it goes right. Yeah. But you've got to be, and that's where I think we don't really sort of bullshit. We say, look, this it could still go wrong, but you could find in the risk, you could find someone that is good for you. That does happen. Yeah. As well as but it's a different. If you've been hurt, those scars go deep, especially betrayal. Yeah. So I think maybe
you're almost feeling more comfortable in the isolation.
Yeah, I think
where you are.
Yeah, I think
it's painful. Yeah, it's unhealthy, but you know how painful it is. You know how unhealthy.
And I ain't got to take a risk of getting rejected. I haven't got to go and I think as well, people if they've got a negative opinion of themselves, they're worried that they're going to go and. Get that reinforced, or people won't talk to them, and some people are just really, really sensitive. Yeah, and they read too much though. So like, people are always trying to read other people's and get it wrong. So I use you're a great example, John, because if you're concentrating, maybe thinking about music, what your next lyrics going to be.
I'm in mind on higher things.
Yeah. Like you can. Walk past you wouldn't know it. But if you go, hi John, you'd go, all right, it's not so someone go, oh, John saw me in Tesco's and didn't say hello. It's like, well, yes, John, he'll be thinking about it. Don't worry about it. That's nothing to do with you. I wouldn't take that personally at all. He's writing lyrics in his head, or he's got 5 kids, he's running around, he's trying to do everything. People they're always looking to read a signal, and most of the time get it wrong. Yeah. They were funny with me. They were what? Yeah, they were funny with me. Were they? Or are you all right with me? Yeah, I'm just tired. That kind of thing. And then people that go in and, they were funny with me. They don't like me. No one likes me. And they get it out of perspective rather than thinking, oh, he was probably just busy, so he didn't have time, and that's maybe feeds into a self-esteem thing as well, where you think, oh, I don't really care. If he said he doesn't like me, who gives a fuck? Yeah. That's not a position a lot of people are in. Yeah. Yeah, no, I've come across that a lot, where people are sort of hypersensitive to signals, but almost seem to be looking for a negative signal all the time. Yes. And it's, Yeah, and sometimes, from their experience, that's what they're looking out for, try not to get hurt again. Yeah. But you can overread it and not realise that, well, no, I was thinking about, we haven't mentioned it yet, but, remembering the Arsenal winning the league, I was just off dreaming about that, Nothing to do with you.
So what's the best thing you think people can do about their own isolation? I mean, do you think it's like, again, we said it's something that creeps up on you? Yeah. It's something to monitor? Something to keep an eye on?
Yeah, definitely, because like you say, it can.
Well, it can be a massive life event, like a bereavement, or a redundancy, or a move, or all that sort of thing. but it can. I think it just can creep up slowly.
I think you recognise it. I think when we talk about all of the things, isolation and loneliness, feeling like a burden, not really giving a fuck. These are things people need to look out for in themselves and each other, so that they can recognise this is one route, this is one step on a path to some real serious issues. And if you're feeling isolated and alone, what is the solution? There's many solutions, but it's also really, really hard, because where do you go for community? You can join a boxing club.
It's an easy thing that I sometimes say, sometimes in these talks, isn't it? It's what's the Cornermen about, and the Cornermen is about communication and community.
Yeah,
which are two things that really help. And they really help with that, with isolation and all the other aspects.
But Southmore Boxing Clubs is a good example of a place where you come, and there's community and talk. There are things you can do, but if you're not. But then if you're not very sporty, you're not into So that's where I think at the Cornermen we have to see who the individual is, what's going on with their isolation, the reason for their isolation. Is it in their own head? Is it physical? Is it practical? Have they lost someone? And then we kind of do from there. So I think what I'm trying to say is it's really personal. So it's really hard to sort of say, oh, you should do this when you're isolated and lonely, because. Without knowing who the individual is and what's going on.
Well, it's a very personal, individual thing, isn't it? And like we already said, some people might consider themselves lonely in a certain situation, other people might not.
Yeah.
Because it's how many relationships do you need? Yeah. Some people need less than others.
Yeah, exactly.
And some people are more confident in those relationships. Yeah. And it's also
some people are all right for like a couple of days on their own, and some people can't stand half hour on their own.
Yeah.
So that kind of depends on the person's kind of personality as well.
Yeah.
You'll talk to someone and they'll be like, oh, no, I've not seen anyone for a week, and they'll be completely fine. I'll talk to another fella, I've not seen anyone for a day, and it could be completely like it's the worst thing in the world. And that's down to their own kind of how they feel.
Yeah.
And, ultimately, the biggest factor in protecting anyone from loneliness is good family.
Yeah.
Really, and it's unfortunate that people don't experience good family where you have good partner, you have a good good parent, and wider family and community. So, I think that's when we talk about some of the things that we've lost. I always hear the old stories of my granddad. It sounds horrible. There was 4 in a room but they were all together. There would be families, the street. Yeah, they would know everybody. They would know whether Mrs. Jones or something, her husband died, so they'd look after her. There was a community. And if you went to the shop, if you were, you go and talk to you go to the butchers and you go to the bakery, you would know you'd interact. Yeah. We don't have interaction anymore. We don't know our neighbours.
No. Don't know neighbours, you can shop online.
Yeah. Our society is geared up to cause isolation and loneliness. Yeah. Not protect us from it. Like you said, community, family, all these things. We stay in our house. We're on our fucking phones and PlayStations and not sure.
which I would say is not a community. They do try and call it.
They're great fun,
online, and they're a bit of fun, but they're no replacement for community. I would say, and as I would also say, ChatGPT is no replacement for a friend.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't know our neighbours apart from a couple of doors down. That was one of the good things about the lockdown, was when we did have those kind of street parties. They were great. And so I think it's very hard, because the way we've kind of created how we function in society is conducive to loneliness and isolation, not community, supporting each other, looking out for each other. We're so suspicious of our neighbours now, rather than wanting to go around and see how they're doing. So I think that would be the biggest battle against isolation and loneliness, would be to have much more community and family and belonging. Yeah, but that's a massive I don't think we can. What we can do is try to do is try and replicate it within the Cornermen, so people feel they're part of the community. And a little bit like when when I was at Emmaus, it was a homeless community. You're trying to build this community so that you're looking out for each other, and then you start to think about those less fortunate than yourselves, all that kind of stuff. So and I've always I think it'd be great to encourage more sort of community stuff rather than these.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it sounds really obvious, even though we've talked for half an hour about this. The antidote to isolation and loneliness is community.
Yeah.
It just seems really obvious.
Yeah.
Although it's obviously, as we said, slightly more difficult to pick apart. And I think we've lost that community. Funny enough, I'm reminded of like when I was a kid in Donegal, and somebody was talking to me about this the other day. But people just used to come into your house.
Yeah.
It was just like people just wander in. It was like normal. You'd unlock your door in the morning, and then all through people would just wander in and say hello. Put the kettle on.
Well, you know,
and that was the community.
Yeah.
There was no need to even knock on the door.
No.
Whereas now, if you want to meet someone, you have to make a lot of arrangements.
Doorbells, who is it? You know, camera.
Yeah.
Who's at my door?
I know, and it'll be texts and arrangements and cancellations and all that sort of thing. And that's the problem with the texting thing as well. You know, you forget to reply to a text, and people are like, he's ignoring me.
That's it. Well, yeah. You know? What emoji should I give? Should I give a heart?
Yeah.
Should respond somehow, or they'll think I'm rude.
Yeah.
You know.
Emojis are taking over.
Yeah.
Especially on some of these school group chats.
But even if I'm myself, I don't want to talk. What are you ringing me for? You fucking freak. Text me.
Yeah.
You know, so I think as well, you know, we sound like a moaning old, but, you know, playing out in the street.
Yeah.
Just love that.
Which the kids don't do anymore. Yeah.
You know, and you just go in your mate's house, you know. Well, we had a bit with our kids, it was great. They used to just come in, you know, you'd turn around and there'd be little George behind you while you're doing the washing. And I loved it, you know, just kids and people running around. You don't in and out of each other's houses.
Yeah.
But we're so suspicious of each other. We're so, you know.
Well, I'm worried about the kids going out.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a nonce on every street corner.
Yeah. But there's probably a lot less than there were when we were doing it.
Well, I mean, it was the 70s when you were going out. They were on telly. Oh, yeah. They had their own TV shows.
Savile, Gary Glitter.
You know, we're right. Yeah, so
great days.
Well, maybe that's something. You know, how much does fear play into our isolation and loneliness now? We're scared of it. We're scared of each other.
Yeah.
You know, we are scared of each other, and we're scared of different people. We're scared of anyone with different views than us. We're scared of, you know, So we live by fear.
Yeah,
I think
and fear leads to anger.
Yeah, and anger leads to hate and the dark side.
Well, now we come on to Star Wars.
That's
probably the perfect point to leave it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
but
yes. Well, just maybe that. You know, having a good faith and a religion is also quite a good antidote to isolation and loneliness, because you don't feel. But that can be that's a bigger.
It's also a cure for addiction.
Yeah. So
that's another conversation.
Just because you mentioned the Force. I thought, actually, you know, when people have a faith, that does help. Yeah. But that's all right. Notes to end it on, is it?
So that ends episode 14. Yeah, isolation and loneliness. I think we've hopefully solved that one. So we'll
right. Well,
cheers, Steve.
Cheers, John. Cheers, Marky.